1S Tiny Whoops have come a long freaking way from the original 1S Inductrix and like the Newbie Drone Acrobee. Brushed motors, bye. Even Newbie Drone has gone from brushed motor. They were a holdout and for a long time argued that brushed motors were better somehow. Like those guys who swear that vinyl records sound better than CDs. Oh, now I done it. Put it in the comments. Do vinyl records sound better than CDs? Sweet, sweet YouTube engagement. 1S Tiny Whoops have come a long freaking way, and today we have some amazing quadcopters like this is the Beta FPV Meteor 65. But that's not what we're here to see today. This is the Happy Model Mobula 6, and these two quadcopters are almost identical in every way. But the Happy Model Mobula 6 is like $80, and the Beta FPV is closer to $100, $110. So, clear winner? That's what we're going to find out. I'm Joshua Bardwell, and you're going to learn something today. Before we dive into the review of the Mobula 6, can we take a second and marvel at how far we've come? Do you remember how crappy brushed micros used to be? And then the Inductrix came out in the original Tiny Whoop, and it was pretty good. But it was nowhere near the performance level that you might be used to if you're used to flying bigger quads. And it wasn't possible at the time to make a brushless Tiny Whoop. And what I've heard is that just winding motors that freaking small, just building them, they were so small that making brushless motors reliable and consistent, it took a while to get around to it. So we moved to quads like this. This is the Eachine Trash Can, or the Mobula 7 was its sort of brother at the time. Still, kind of still is. They still sell them. And these were 2S Tiny Whoops. I say were, they still are. 2S Tiny Whoops. They are much bigger. They are much heavier. They don't really have the same nimbleness and ability to just kind of zip around the furniture, but they are pretty good and they do capture some of that magic. But we had to go to 2S. We had to give it a lot of weight and, ooh, I got it in the box. Those days are gone because these brushless Tiny Whoops are so freaking good. They fly so freaking good that I almost want to say, forget 2S. If you look at 2S Tiny Whoops like the Eachine Trash Can, the Mobula 7, or even the Emax Tiny Hawk, and the Tiny Hawk is really good, they're still a different flight category than these little guys coming in around 22, 24 grams, and this is the closest I've seen to capturing the magic of the old brushed Tiny Whoops while still having the rip-snorting frickin' speed, performance, thrust, handling that you want when you sort of compromise up to a 2S. So, which of these is better? Well, to answer that question, we got to dial in to the differences between them. Let's start by talking about the motors, and both of these guys have 0802 sized motors. The Mobula 6 can be ordered with either 19,000 kV or 25,000 kV motors, whereas the Beta FPV comes with either 22,000 kV motors or 19,000 kV motors. And I think this is a really easy decision to make, because when I flew the Mobula 65 on the 22,000 kV motors, and bear in mind that that also had the BT 2.0 connector, which I have scientifically demonstrated absolutely does improve performance compared to the PH 2.0 connector on the Mobula. When I raced it, I could barely get 2 minutes, 15 seconds, and it actually made it hard for me to qualify in the race. And it certainly meant when I was just flying for fun, my pack life was really short. I think that 22,000 kV, like on the Meteor 65, it's okay for racing. If you need to race 2, maybe 3 laps, a minute to a minute and 30, hard racing, 22,000 kV is a fine place to be. But it really hurt me in qualifying. And I would have rather had the 19,000 kV and been able to get that 4th lap rather than the 22,000 kV and just been sort of sitting on the floor, barely able to take off because the battery was dead. Now, if 22,000 kV on the Meteor is too much, then 25,000 kV on the Mobula 6 is way too much. And I can't verify that from personal experience because I have the 19,000 kV version of the Mobula 6. And this is the one, whether you get the Mobula 6 or whether you get the Meteor, I think the 19,000 kV is the one that most people are going to be happiest with. Because I got easily 4 minutes of flight time. Granted, I wasn't racing, I was just tooling around, but I got easily 4 minutes of flight time and a little bit more off of a battery on this one. And that was not a BT 2.0 battery. That was with the PH 2.0 connector that's on it. So, could be even better theoretically. Is the 19,000 kV going to be slower? If you are like a hardcore racer, it's going to be a little slower, but ask yourself, how often are you at full throttle anyway? That higher kV gives you more top end, but it also means you have to work a lot harder to manage the throttle. You get much shorter flight times, much harder on the batteries. 22,000 for the Meteor, okay for racing. 25,000 for the Mobula, I guess, but I think it's just going to be a battery killer. Most people should choose the 19,000 kV, in my opinion. Another big difference between these guys is that on the Mobula 6, look inside the canopy. Do you see a video transmitter in there? Everything on the Mobula 6 is integrated into a single flight control board. The ESC, of course, the flight controller, the receiver, and the video transmitter is one board. And on the one hand, that does mean that if anything goes bad, you're going to be replacing the whole thing. But how often do you replace the video transmitter on your Tiny Whoop? One effect of that is that the weight, this guy comes in about 2 grams lighter. The Mobula comes in at just about 21 grams. The official weight is 22 grams, whereas the Meteor comes in at closer to 23 grams. And you may say, wow, what's 2 grams difference? But bear in mind, when we're talking about a 20-gram quadcopter, the 2-gram difference is about 10% of the total weight. So that's like adding 50 or 60 grams to your typical 5-inch mini quad. Those 2 grams do matter. The battery connector is another thing that sets these guys apart. The Meteor from Beta FPV has the new BT 2.0 connector, and the Mobula 6 has the traditional PH 2.0 connector. I do have to tell you that the PH 2.0 connector, it is a high-quality PH 2.0 connector. It has the solid pins, not the folded metal pins. That's better. And it has a pretty firm plastic housing here. Some of the cheaper ones have this really just soft, lightweight plastic housing, makes it really easy to plug the battery in backwards. It's going to be a little harder to plug it in backwards on this one. It's a pretty good PH 2.0 connector. But there's no question, and again, I did some testing on the bench that I think proves that the BT 2.0 connector has less voltage drop. In my tests at about 5 amps discharge, it had about 0.1 volts higher and a little bit longer discharge. That's going to translate into about 200 more RPM at the props, and that's not nothing. I got to point out that was with brand new connectors. I haven't tested this, but a lot of people have chimed in to say that as you plug and unplug the PH 2.0 connector 50, 100 times, whatever, that it wears out and it gets worse and worse. We could probably expect the BT 2.0 connector to do better just based on its larger pins and the tapered pins and so forth, but we haven't proven that. Suffice it to say, the BT 2.0 connector is better, but how freaking hard would it be for you to cut this off and put a BT 2.0 connector on here for like $3? So that's not really an edge for the Beta 1 unless you just really hate the idea of soldering on a BT 2.0 connector. And for those of you who have an investment in a lot of Whoop batteries and don't want a BT 2.0 connector, well, then you're going to be cutting this one off and swapping it out. So 50-50. Now, in almost every other way, these guys are almost identical. The flight controller, CPU specs, the video transmitter power, the ESC rating, they're almost the same. I did some range testing on them, and in my very, very informal testing, I seem to be getting slightly better range out of the Meteor 65, but honestly, neither of them has great range. That's just a fact of life when you're working with the built-in receiver on these little flight controllers. Another thing that does distinguish them, speaking of the receiver, is that you can order the Meteor with a Crossfire receiver pre-installed, and it comes with a custom-made little micro Crossfire antenna that'll let you fly this on Crossfire if you want. Of course, you could. Well, I assume you could do that on the Mobula, but I guess I'm not 100% sure that there's pins on the, T2, R2. Okay, so you could do that also on the Mobula if you wanted to. You just have to do it yourself. As far as durability goes, I haven't had a problem with either of them. I've obviously flown the Meteor more, as you can tell from the chips here. I actually haven't had the Mobula as long. I've crashed them both. I did actually just realize that I have finally managed to break the Meteor frame. I mean, everything will break eventually, but a lot of people are thinking back to some of the earlier beta FPV quads where the canopy was just total potato chip, and this doesn't seem to be that. I can also say that I watched Nick Burns' review of the Mobula 6, and he seemed to be happy with its durability as well. So no specific durability issues with the frames and canopies on either of these, but of course, only time will tell. The other question worth asking is not durability necessarily, but like build quality. And this is a tough one that I kind of just have to acknowledge, but I can't really tell you which way to jump. Happy Model, some of the stuff they've put out has been just really poor quality. You would get it, it would die a few weeks later, and then you'd just be screwed. I hate to say that because I hate to dog on them. This is a good product and I do like flying it, but there's just no way to know. Mine has been good. Maybe yours would be too. Beta FPV doesn't have a perfect track record, but they have I think a little better track record maybe than Happy Model. The truth is though that I just know sort of what I hear and what experiences I've had, and I can't really tell you to choose one or the other based on the durability. Personally, I think I would lean towards the Beta FPV for durability, for sort of quality of the electronics, not just dying on you, but I'm not sure if that's actually based on evidence or just a gut feeling. So that brings us to the last thing that distinguishes these guys, and that is the camera. And I gotta tell you, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna let you look. I'm gonna let you look at some footage and decide for yourself, and then you don't need me to tell you, right? Okay. So that brings us to the end of the video, and as always, the question, which one should you buy? And this is a tough question, because the Mobula 6 is like 80 bucks, and the Meteor is like 105, 110 bucks, and that's a fair amount of money. And I don't think, if you look at the specs, I don't think you could convince yourself that the Meteor was $20, $25, $30 better. I just don't think you could. They're so similar in so many different ways. if you looked at the footage and you think that the camera on the Meteor is better, and I do. I think the camera on the Meteor looks better in good light. I'm not sure that it's better in like when the lights are out and you're doing an LED track. It did have some issues with like the light blurring and flaring out that I had to struggle with. But under most lighting conditions, I do think the Meteor is better. Do you think that's worth another $25, $30? The BT 2.0 connector? Yeah. I do want to revise one thing that I said earlier in the video about the 22,000 kV motors on the Meteor 65 or the 25,000 kV motors on the Mobula 6. I said that the 19,000 kV was probably what most people are going to want. And I think if you're flying indoors in a typical tiny whoop, a tighter environment, that's absolutely true. But I just got back from doing one last comparison flight back to back with these guys to make sure I was fresh going into this video. And outdoors, I flew outdoors. 1S tiny whoops flying outdoors? Come on. But these guys can do it as long as it's not too windy. And the 22,000 kV Meteor 65 was like way better. It felt more like flying. The throttle position was about where I wanted it. The speed and response, it felt like flying a much bigger, faster, more powerful quad. The 19,000 kV motors on the Meteor 6, definitely I feel like I'm flying a whoop. A really good whoop. Like I could do a power loop without hitting the ground, but if you were going to fly in more open environments or maybe outdoors, maybe the higher kV motors are the right one for you, but damn, your flights are going to be short. Okay, that's going to do it for this video. There's links to all these products down in the video description. They are affiliate links, and in case you didn't know, you can make any purchase. You don't have to buy the linked product. You click the affiliate link, you make any purchase at that store, and I get a small commission on anything you buy. And that's how all affiliate links work. So just anytime you shop at an affiliated store for anybody who you want to support, just real quick, go grab one of their affiliate links, click the link, go shop at the store. They get a small commission. I get a small commission. It does help out. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you think. Meteor 65? Mobula 6? What about the Newbie drone? Newbie drone has a brushless Acroby. It's like $140 though. Is it that much better? I don't know. I don't have one. I haven't flown it, but maybe you should look at it too. Thanks so much for watching. Happy flying, you guys.